Welcome one and all, Nyanko here, and today I am going to be talking about an author that I really like, who is called Jaqueline Wilson. Now, as many of you probably know, Jaqueline Wilson is an author who began writing books and publishing them in the early 90s and has been basically non-stop producing books ever since. Now, the fun thing about Jaqueline Wilson, as many of you probably know, is that she covers a lot of topics that society doesn't usually like to talk about. So you've got stories about characters who are dealing with family members with mental illness. You've got stories about families who are dealing with hidden truths. You've got stories about families who are dealing with like abuse and stuff. Other stories are like forbidden love, and just like the social stigma around certain jobs as well. And the foster care system is also another one that she's known for writing about, with stories like Tracy Beaker, Dustin Baby, and what was the other one? There's another one. It'll come to me. But yeah, I'll probably put it up in the corner, the books that she writes about, like foster care and stuff. There's also ones about puberty and coming of age and trying to fit in. The list is actually endless about stories that she writes. She also writes stories about figures in the past as well, so like kids in like Victorian ages. She also writes stories about grief, revolve around grief, and then I actually can't list the amount of books that she's done. I'll probably put how many she's published here. If you're also like me and you grew up in England, she is like one of the most well-known children's authors that there are. With just the amount of awards she's won, the amount of books she's published, it's absolutely amazing. I'm probably just gonna reminisce a little bit in this video, talk about some of my favourites, talk about some that I wasn't too fond of, just kind of discussing all of her books in general, which I know is a bit different for one of my videos. Normally I pick one book, stick to it, and there we go. But I couldn't pick one for Jaqueline Wilson, and I didn't really want to make it into a really ridiculously long series of talking about each book. So this might be a slightly longer video, it might not, we'll see. Just covering some of my favourite books in her repertoire. My ultimate favourite is called Midnight. It's about a young girl called Violet who is obsessed with fairies and lives in her own world, basically, because her home situation isn't really great. Her dad is very controlling and domineering, and her mum is a bit of a wimp, or that's how she sees her. But then she also hates the fact of how her dad treats her mum, because it's very similar to how her brother treats her, which is kind of paralleling you can become what you see, and kids absorb what they see from their parents. It's basically also, this particular story is amazing because it deals with the fact that Violet doesn't really have many friends because of her home life. She makes a new friend, Jasmine, who moves into the area, and she's absolutely ecstatic that this girl wants to be her friend because she's really popular and cool. Well, that's how Violet sees her. And then it's also about Violet becoming her own person and trying to break out of the cycle of, you were a woman, stay under my foot kind of thing. Which to me was really empowering as a child, to see characters who were quite scaredy, quite weak-willed, and breaking out of that and trying to do better, because it showed me that just because you've got bad circumstances doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay trapped by them. And it was one of the first books that really hit home that my home life wasn't necessarily the norm for everybody else. So I had two loving parents, I had a sister, I now have a sibling, very normal. I had loving grandparents, one of my grandmothers is a bit narcissistic and is very much a martyr for herself, but, you know, on the grand scale of things, I didn't really have much to do with her in the long run. So yeah, I had a very, in the definition, traditional home life, you know, and then reading Jaqueline Wilson's books, and especially Midnight, was the first one that I read that really hit home that this might not necessarily be the case for every other child out there. And that was kind of a huge revelation for 7-year-old me. But yeah, sorry, going back to the story. So it then turns out that Will is adopted, and that's part of the reason behind the tension between Will and Violet's dad. And then you find more out about the story as you go through, and the only reason that it comes up is because he's having an argument at his grandmother's, and she mentions something about bad blood, which then leads into them finding out that he's adopted, which is kind of a shocker. And then later on, Will and Violet are playing Truth or Dare, and she can't answer one of the truths, I think. So they send her off up to the attic, where she actually finds out that she had another brother called Will, who passed away when he was very young. And then the parents tried to replace him by adopting the current Will. And then she runs downstairs after her time's up to try and tell Will. And she finds Will and Jasmine kissing, because Jasmine had come over. And they kind of diss her fairies. Now she feels like this is a huge betrayal, stabbed in the back, freaks out, trashes her fairy, kind of hurts Will in the process, and runs away. Where she runs into like her favourite author, and they kind of become friends. And then she goes home, makes up with Will. They have a conversation with their parents, who explain everything, and then life actually starts to seem to get better, because like there's no hidden secrets anymore, and life moves forward. And then it's like a sorry. What Will does actually is really sweet at the end of the book, is he repairs all of her broken fairies that she'd made and hangs them up in the garden, and I thought that was really sweet. So yeah, that one is my ultimate favourite of Jaqueline Wilson's, just because it was the first one that really I kind of understood in terms of just, this is some people's reality. You know, I mean, there's other ones about situations like, again, with divorce. So Candy Floss, you've got the main girl Floss, whose mum and new husband go to Australia for the year, but she doesn't want to leave her dad, so she ends up moving in with her dad, who owns a burger like trailer, and she starts getting bullied because she comes in smelling of the burgers and the chips and like the fat, basically the fat fryers. And you know, it shows like the social stigma around that kind of thing, and kids who grow up in that environment. Now the dad isn't a bad dad, he's a wonderful dad, he does everything for her, you know, and it just again hit home for me, like, why are people so cruel? You know, she's got a dad who loves her, who's doing his best to provide for her, so what if he's selling burgers out of you know, a van? Like, who gives a damn at the end of the day, as long as she's cared for, she's cleaned, she's got clean clothes, she's got food in her belly, and there's a roof over her head. Who the fudge cares? So yeah, I really love that one. Another one actually that really hit home for me was Love Lessons. So, as I think most people can relate to, most of us in our teenage years had some form of crush on a teacher. And, you know, we all, like, swooned over the dreamy geography teacher, or, oh, look at that PE teacher, ain't he fit? Or, you know, oh, she's hot. That kind of thing. But, yeah, Love Lessons kind of goes into, like, the taboo romance between a teacher and a student, and the fact that, A, the teacher is married, and B, like, this poor girl has never actually known any form of love really before, like bar family love, because her dad was a bit of a dictator, homeschooled her, only really taught her certain subjects, but then he goes into hospital because of a heart attack, I think it is, or a stroke, a blood clot or something like that, and then the mum can't handle it, so she enrolls them into normal school. And again, it's another one of like the mum ending up stepping up and putting the dad in his place, and it's also about the teenage daughter coming to terms with being a woman and entering into society and a bit, and like falling in love with her teacher and not being able to draw the boundary between, you know, okay, this is just a crush, I stay on this side of the line, and she actively tries to step over the line, try to start a relationship with this teacher who is married and has young children. And the way she does this is through offering to babysit his children while he's going out with his wife. And I like how it ends, because nothing really comes of it, but at the same time it's showing that this happens probably more than people will admit to in terms of like teacher-student relationships. And that's something in media that seems to be absolutely glorified, is like this 16-year-old girl getting with like the 21, 22-year-old teacher. And like, it wouldn't be too bad if it was like the 21, 22-year-old female or male getting with like the 25, 26, 27-year-old, you know. But when they're still a child and they're still developing and you're in a position of power over them, that's just not okay. And I absolutely despise shows that like are like, this is amazing, you should want to date your teacher and like marry him at the end. Pretty Little Liars. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. So yeah, again, another story about, you know, just crappy home lives leading into like bad decisions and stuff. Now, this one's going to be a bit divisive because I'm not overly fond of the Tracy Beaker books, but I really like the Tracy Beaker TV show. I'm not sure why I didn't like the Tracy Beaker books. Maybe I just couldn't gel with her as a character, but like watching it acted in real life was actually really interesting. So I loved the adaptation of it on TV, but I didn't like the book, and I can't really put my finger on it, but yeah, it's one that really I never really gelled with. And I know it's probably just because I struggled to deal with Tracy herself, and it's probably because I couldn't find anything to, like, I could sympathise with her, and I understood that like life had dealt her a pretty crappy hand. And she was acting out because of this. She just wanted attention. Now, it could be she wanted attention, or it could be that she had undiagnosed ADHD, which in girls is very, like, likely to fly under the radar. And they probably just labelled her as a troubled child or something. But they never seem to be trying to help her. And I don't know. Like, I can sympathise with Tracy, and I do like Tracy. I just, for some reason, I couldn't get into the book that much. So in terms of like my favourites, it's not up there, it's kind of like down the bottom. Now, rereading it as an adult, I did find it a lot more compelling, and I could sympathise more, and I could empathise a lot more, and I understood. So maybe it's one of those books that I probably should have read more into my later teen years instead of in my very early like childhood years, because there's been plenty of times that I've read something and I was like, oh, I don't like this, and then I came back to it a couple of years later and I was like, damn, actually this is really good. And it was more just because I had more life experience and I had a bit more like knowledge and stuff. So maybe that was it. But yeah, definitely preferred the TV show as a child anyway to the books. But yeah, I definitely, if you can try and find the TV series for Tracy Beaker, do. It's amazing. And I think they're coming back actually with the new books that she's done about Tracy being a mum and Tracy like her life after the foster care system, which I thought was really good. So yeah, I'm gonna try and find that and watch that myself. So yeah, do that. Again, another one that deals with like the foster care system is Dustin Baby, like I said earlier. And that book, oh, that made me cry so bad. Because you hear about it all the time. Babies who were dumped in dustbins or left in toilets or just abandoned in front of fire stations and stuff like that, or just given up in the hospital. And like, I understand why sometimes people like hand them over to, you know, the fire station or like leave them in the hospital. I don't understand why you dump your baby in a dustbin. Personally, it just, to me, that seems like madness. But yeah, it's about the main character trying to find out who her parents are, and she's desperately trying to find a sense of self, I think, because she wants to know who she is. She wants to know why she was left in the dustbin. And I think the thing for me that was really epic about that book was the fact that she doesn't really get that many answers. Like, she never really finds her mum. She kind of comes to the conclusion that her mum was probably like a young teenager, terrified, gave birth in a bathroom, and then freaked out that her parents would probably murder her for getting pregnant and having a child. So she just abandoned her in a bin. And then the thing that she does find is that the person that rescued her, she kind of reconnects with him, and she starts wishing that he had been her dad. But then by the end of it, she goes back to, like, I think it's her foster mum or her adoptive mum, and is like, yeah, you are my family kind of thing. I think that it all starts because she, like, runs away because she has a fight with her adoptive mum or something. I can't remember. It's been a very long time since I read that book, but yeah, it was really good. And it made me cry in so many ways. It was amazing. Yet at the same time, absolutely, like, heartbreaking, because I was like, oh, this poor girl. You know? Actually, another one that actually made me bawl my eyes out was Vicky Angel. Again, this one actually deals with grief. But it's also kind of like a power dynamic. So you have Vicky, who is like the main friend, and then you have the main girl, who I forget her name of. But Vicky ends up dying because they get into a fight, and she, like, bumps her off the curb and she gets hit by a car. And then the rest of the plot of the book is about the friend having to deal with this angel Vicky in her head, who is constantly trying to get her to do bad things and doesn't want her to move on and have friends. And it's kind of the representation of her guilt around the fact that she feels she killed her friend, when really she didn't. You know, it was an accident. It could have happened to anybody. So it was, that one, again, was absolutely just heartbreaking. To be fair to Jaqueline Wilson, everything I've read of hers, even if I wasn't overly invested in it, or I couldn't, like, I always finish them, because the writing is just so well done. She can make you feel, even if you despise a character, she can make you, like, really hate them, you know? Her writing is amazing. So, I mean, I can't describe enough how amazing her books are. Now, I know not all of them are for everybody, but usually you can find one within the repertoire that will, like, resonate with you. So, like, there's ones like Best Friends, there's, like, Double Act, you know, which is more about, like, friends and sisters. You've got Cookie, which again is about escaping domestic abuse, which I really enjoyed. There is one book out there of Jaqueline Wilson's that you will probably read and absolutely adore, you know? I mean, there's probably loads that you'll read and they'll make you cry. But at the end of the day, isn't that kind of kudos to the author if they can make you cry, you know? It means that the writing is so compelling that it tugs at your heartstrings and makes you feel everything, you know? Oh, would these stop? Like, I don't know how she does it. It's just, they're amazing. And I mean, she must go to some pretty dark places when she's writing some of them. And I just want to know how she deals with that. Because, like, damn, it would probably break me if I had to, you know, research some of these stories and just make anything half as good as what she's done about some of these stories. Oh, yeah. She's just A tier writer for me. She's, like, right up at the best as one of my favourite authors of all time. Because you can still get stuff out of it as an adult. And you can still read them and enjoy her books as children. So, yeah. Probably will leave it there for now. I've probably rambled enough. Leave your favourite Jaqueline Wilson comment down below. Jaqueline Wilson comment, sorry. Comment your favourite Jaqueline Wilson book down below. Let me know what you think about her writing style. If you like her or if you don't like her, let me know. Because I'd like to, like, see other people's perspectives on what they thought about her books. You know, like this video if it's content that you want to see more of. And always, please subscribe to the channel. It would be a big help for me to help me grow the channel. And I would appreciate you kittens forever if you would subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Anyway, I love you all, my babies. See you later. Mwah. Ciao.